Wilson Morales from Black Film TV. Hey, Laurent, how's it going?
Hi, Wilson. How are you doing? Thanks so
Good.
much.
About a decade or so ago, I hosted a radio show live in New York City called Soundtrack. And
Okay.
so I'm very familiar with the scores of plenty of films, and to see this one was a treat because obviously now I know I don't need the book. I got the documentary. To hear firsthand from all of these people who worked with him and how he got how he was chosen. But you've worked with these guys for a number of years. So how much of a challenge was it to put this stuff together? Was it more the research or just getting everybody to do it to get them together so you can put it together?
Well, it was a huge challenge. It was literally 30 years of a relationship that I've had with Steven Spielberg and John Williams that eventually paid off. But John, was very resistant because he doesn't like to talk about himself. He's extremely modest, extremely reserved, and I can appreciate that. But I really approach him with discussing music. Every single one of my questions where was something to do with music, and he opened up on that. But uh, um, aside from the access I have to people who worked with him because I know them personally, it was a real challenge. How do you present a life of someone who's lived close to 100 years old and has been doing music since the age of 5? How do you do that in a way that is inspirational, sort of universal, so that you don't feel you're giving a lecture, and yet you don't do a hit parade of all the great score that he's done, and introduce people to other sides of his musical world in a way that feels very inviting. So all of that means a lot of work, and getting up every day at 4 a.m. For a year and bathing yourself in his music, in his life story, working very hard at during the interviews to get something else, but just oh, I think John is nice. I wanted so much more that I was harassing my interview subjects with more. So I have to say, to be honest with you, that this was probably the hardest film I've ever made, because I really felt it was a big responsibility, not only toward John, but toward my work with Stephen for the past 30 years.
When you have all of this footage, archival and the ones you've done talk with, how hard is the editing process so that way you can nail down what hasn't been talked about and the stuff we are familiar with?
Well, I write a script. I mean, literally, as I go, I write a script, like a movie script, basically. I have all the interviews transcribed, and then it's a question of really finding a structure. And I have cards, and then in the cutting room we have a giant board, and we have act one, act two, act three, and transitions. And okay, so if we talk about this, how are we going to transition into this? There's a whole science, really. That means a very close relationship, obviously, with my editors and story producer, and we literally breathe and live John Williams for the whole duration of the production. But it really starts with me by myself writing the script, and that becomes the blueprint.
Mhm. Before I let you go, what do you want audiences to get from those who know him and for those who are being introduced to him?
Well, I have to say, what I want people to take away from this is really an inspiration for themselves. I think the best documentaries, just like the best movies, the scripted movies, is really how does it speak to you? And I think John's story is so universal that there is something to learn from him, even if you're not a musician. It applies to anyone really wanting to be creative and artistic.
Congratulations on this documentary. It was a pleasure to watch. I'm sure I'll watch whatever you do next. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you so much.